This is Roger Markby, Nelson Toll, co-founder of Capital Chemist, and Gary here. Symbolic of trying to show respect for his dick sucking of Roger while he rocks like that back and forth. Rock. And here's Roger going, well, I'll do the overseas collusion and all the scientific fraud and stuff. Good idea, Roger. Go, Boofs, go. Pause. Go. Open 7 days. We want to play with your ass and suck balls. Come to Capital Chemist. We'll play with your ass and we suck balls. Suck balls. Capital Chemist. We suck balls. Capital Chemist. Open at a suburb near you. Hi, I'm Gary Gans, the fucking hero from Capital Chemist. Violence is caused by the neurochemical subordination of women. Their feelings. They come from their ovaries. So I at first thought he was crazy when Roger Toll explained that he found the most efficient way to try to identify if there's a mole in the company is by being a molester. And when I asked for him to explain that, I said, is it because you intend to arrest the mole? Like, and he said that, yeah, it's also because, so he sort of makes arrester a word, a shorthanded word, so that they don't understand his sway over the long arm of the law. But yeah, it considers it a pretty good time-honored method for trying to detect a mole in the company. And if he feels that they are a mole that he wants to have arrested and that he thinks has offended the entire heart of the nation, then that's when he feels that he's engaging in the practice of molestation. Because when it comes to those types of offenders, people that insult the heart of the nation, he thinks he considers himself the best arrester, and despite taking after heroes like Cool Hand Luke, who his Western hero, who just kills because he's left with no choice. Other people seem bad to him, so yeah, the short-handed, cunning linguist, impersonating the long arm of the law and conducting investigations into private sector company moles through the practice of molestation. Just that was arrest or investigation. Impersonation. Yeah, impersonation of the law. But with an intended switch, because molestation, he doesn't impersonate that, but once again his sway within the military-industrial complex has absolutely got more people thinking he's, initiating police check protocols as someone outranking the AFP when he's not even a member of it. So yeah, that would constitute him to been the company mole. But then his investigation would end having never begun, and his only real claim to being true to himself is through the endorsement of molestation. And since it's and since his own causalism is to relegate the motives for such behavior and activity to genes and triggers and such, like well, if I ever hear him pander to that placative piece of shit, like the line that arrested and detained pedophiles use, like, well, you must understand, we honestly love these children, and I'll say that about children, they're fucked. And the book of Genesis in the Bible does not well, yeah, the book of Genesis leaves you having to face the conclusion that it was actually on the minds of the first created couple by God, that their children would need to have reproductive sex with their siblings as soon as they were past puberty and able to, and the girls are able to have babies, to get pregnant. That's kids fucking kids one another, and that's how the Adam and Eve story can only progress unless it's contested that creation began by a God with the creation of one male and one female. any Christian or theologian that is contestive of the Genesis creation narrative, that our species did not begin with one man and one woman, that supports evolution, for instance. Well, obviously, yeah, obviously they don't believe in Adam and Eve, and then such a criticism would not apply to them. But for those that do, and those that are non-contestants of the religion, it's why I think they don't see bullshit in the media. I was talking about this on a recording last night it was about an hour of me talking, and it got seriously cut. And I was talking about how media scams get instigated, and then you wind up with Rupert Murdoch, so successful at having caused heartbreak, ruined families, driven countless wedges, and created awkwardness that was thoroughly unnecessary. And then having the goal to smile at a camera and say, "We'll just bury your mistakes." That's him talking about. It applies to journalistic projects. So to get your understanding of what goes on if you're targeted, what they're trying to do is get, as they advance with more research profiles, they're trying to get words like conspiracy made synonymous with paranoia. So on an intellectual level, that it means things like don't apply guesswork to how big pharma like to do business. But conspiracy is a legitimate motive to crime. It's why Charles Manson was jailed for the majority of his victims. And so unless you just say that Charles Manson was not justly arrested, your conspiracy does exist. But in short, what goes on is that, and why these errors in judgment get made, discovered later, and then the Murdoch maneuver, bury your mistakes, involves burying a case so that they get away with reporting whatever they've reported, though it be a scam. They try and leave you to do conclusive guessing games with just introspectively to try and guess what it is that they've done to you. If you fail to come forward with an adequate answer to that question, they'll aim to have psychiatrically misrepresented you to the end that your inability to answer the question will seem like memory loss, However, if you are if you're investigative and come up with answers, then it's going to be quite likely with the power play and the tactics of Roger Toll. It'd be seen to be you admitting to. So what he'll do is he'll pass a religiously based judgment over a person and go, well, he threatens you, essentially, telling you to accept a particular type of moral responsibility, and this isn't contacting you at your residence. You have no something he himself pledged, promised he would not do, and though you're well aware that he breaks his own rules, there was an ignorance is bliss element to going, well, as long as he just doesn't verbally accost me, reminding me of this Privacy Act violation here and this Privacy Act violation there. And this wasn't so much because so they have an interesting way of trying to flip, like me saying that, for instance, they might say, well, he has something to hide if he had a problem with us violating his privacy. So, well, no, Roger had given me his word, and there was no contractual employee agreement, so once he contradicted his own word there, I was at risk. I realized he is a tremendously insensitive person and indecent. Yeah, so, well, I think that there's a double-minded fucking hypocritical aspect to the religious mentality because of things like, you know, whether it be Masonic chanting or Christian Hillsong church or worship, songs of praise, psalms and hymns, and or whatever, the common lyrical framework for interpretation is these lyrics, let them be of respect and adoration and praise to a deity. So the morally prescriptive is perennial themes to the context in which what can scarcely be claimed to be considered art are practiced in churches, and then they lash out at actually principled artists because the type of language extends to so many different contexts and even puts poetic, new genres of styles and things like this. So, with more context interpretively to then the religious are capable of framing the issue around. What they do is this it's something that we as fans, well understood in the 90s, and who would think that they would want to resurrect an old battle from the 90s? There was already one back then, and that is that, if what you're saying is how is doesn't really matter whether what's been described is in a introspective contentions and difficulty, hardship, or outer worldly disarray and in chaos. What's not been done is that these are not songs of praise. They'll try and say, and the Christians will try and say things like, well, these are strong songs of praise to the devil. The greatest trick the devil ever played was convincing the world he didn't exist. Well, no, not according to your Bible. The greatest trick that the devil ever played was every single time he tried to trick the biblical God, and every single time he did, he succeeded to do so. So, actually, if the Christians are after definitive proof that Jesus could not have been the incarnation of the biblical God, it's because his character is actually written up in Gospels to have entered into a debate rebuttal in which he contests and overthrows Lucifer. And so now what I want to ask you to consider is that if you've got let's say a scene were to be faked using pretty much like a set, the techniques of staging a scene and filming it as with a set. I mean, I've shown with Photoshop I can easily edit as I did a photo of myself as an adult standing defensively behind my back as a youngster, because largely it was at work for the chemist. I could tell that I was Manson has said don't lose the inner child, but the church activists in Freemasonry and in various denominations of Christianity heard George Bush say something about no child left behind initiative, and then heard talk about the importance of being young at heart and the preservation of the inner child, and with busy as they were investigating for moles in the company, came up with their idea, in addition to promoting the Freemason idea of not turning the other cheek, in contest of Christianity's to turn the other cheek, and they came up with a program called No Child's Behind Left, and So, what are the odds in? And one point here to consider with the Freemasons is that there's really nothing said about by Lucifer in relation to the crucifixion of Jesus. So, that's actually an area where some of the reserved keynotes in Masonic church beliefs are, you know, they'd want to fill, they'd be filling in the blanks there. So you will ask, you know, what could be the odds that someone who might have so many handshakes with Rupert Murdoch, that by transference of Roger's pedophilic appetites to Rupert Murdoch, and Rupert Murdoch's endorsement of burying mistakes, the transference of pedo powers from one gentleman to the other has resulted in the recent opening of a preschool on Rupert Murdoch's left palm. But yeah, the staging of scenes in a way that is required, like if you see camera footage of somebody and it's a news press report and their face is pixelated out of recognition, on inquiry you might be told that that's because there are court elements to the conflict under consideration, and because of court rules or whatnot, faces had to be pixelated. But what that does allow for is for a lookalike, a doppelganger, to be placed. They just have to steal some clothing that's gonna get ID'd, like, you know, witness ID'd, and then pixelate some face. And so, you know, I'm not saying that when I say I don't regret saying what I said over the phone, and I'm referring to the offensive question I was asked, it's because it either meant that this was Capital Zone co-founders calling, or that they had themselves acted off a wind-up for getting me represented as dangerous because of art, which I'm offended by in principle. But yeah, the dual force of all musical material in the context of Mason church rituals and Christian church rituals be contentively contextualized and interpretively understood as praising and adoration for worship deities, is that they then try and imagine some way to, in addition, what they want to suppress is that, like, the claim that their God is good. You know, with 9 million children dying under the age of 5, many of whom don't even know enough about language to comprehend what sins they've committed in violation of the gift of free will that God had given them, and why 9 million children a year have to die before reaching the age of 5, that a God with all knowledge and power, much worse is still to insult our intelligence by saying he's also infinite in love. Given these traits, the defense of these innocent youngsters would be something that this God would be absolutely interested in their safekeeping and well-being. So when God fails the biblical God fails then to do so, when he could stop the harm and suffering that's endured, that ends lives and ends them young. God either cannot do anything about the situation, or else does not want to and chooses not to, and is therefore either evil or impotent. So yeah, it'd be tremendous. It's not even unreasonable sitting from to go, well, you've pixelated this person's face in footage on this news reel. Why should I even believe that they are who you've identified them as? And yeah, that allows for tacky. I am aware that after and the accusatory question that I copped on the street on my home street very early in 2010 was so insulting, given how worried I had been and been punished once already for emotional distress. And I'd been classed an acceptable risk by Peter Holder. But this is after he had said things to me like, well, don't go to or deal with the AFP. And that's when I realized that for sure that this relationship that Roger has with the AFP is one of comprised of him manipulating them from one end. Otherwise, there's just no way to account for that sort of two-faced look at the principle of profession of the long arm of the law that he shorthandedly misrepresents in his impersonation of them, especially when inspecting for moles within his company, and that being called a molestation. So yeah, I'm absolutely not denying to have been accused of a very offensively posed question. I will even contend that caller knew they didn't have the right to indirectly do so, and so because where they hear and what they want to represent, this art piece that I love, has been about what you're made to take for granted if you indulge in concepts like subliminal programming or post-hypnotic suggestion. Is that morally, that context, that religious context of language and phraseology in the morally prescriptive context is been once again reinvoked as this art is assessed and profiled, and it's not only been assessed as morally prescriptive because those doing the profiling have been singing to their own embarrassment for many years lip service placations to supernatural beings that never existed, is that they want to make out lyrics, wording in art pieces to be about not just the morally prescriptive, but morally prescriptive in relation to the will to infringe against basic rights of another individual. And yeah, so how this goes about is very similar to how you have people like Jim Jones and the Ku Klux Klan. It's just that you'll have someone like Rupert Murdoch, and in this case Roger Toll from Capital Chemist, who he likes to put out the official word that he's constantly petrified of the press, but that is into international collusion. Something he doesn't want his own staff to work out. Says a lot more about him feigning the officiation of his professional standings, extension to the scope and duties of ranking police, military officers, although an exploitation of trust that he would have with militia and military industrial complex, technology, shipping, and gives him opportunity to really calculate how to pull off scams. But so a religious judgment is made and passed first, and you aren't told what even you're just things are said to you like, oh, and I think you'll figure it out. And what you figure out is that you've been completely misjudged by fallaciousness that the likes of which you would think they understood. Yeah, so a blurred, shooting a lookalike and blurring their face. Why do you think it doesn't have? A religiously charged and based judgment of indecency of some sort is made, and it's what you're told, then you're robbed, your phone cut off, so you can't report the robbery from your property. I call mum and get her to come over, and I'm phoning to report to the police about this burglary again, and they make a mental health referral. So they didn't even, in 2010, do the job of a police investigator. And so, yeah. So in their minds, they think they're doing the absolute right thing. They think they've caught you for comprehensive motive to do certain forms of harm, when they've just made a religious judgment of art that you appreciate, and that's, it's spiteful on both levels, and it's known to be religious discrimination, even if these were songs of like Dirty Dancing, I've had the time of my life, love songs. It's still known to be religious discrimination. But when it's art that challenges us with the confrontation of wrongs, and questioning them. I know one reason in Doppelherz many viewers don't even hear the questioning in Manson's voice. That he's asking questions throughout the vast majority of the film, and a lot of that has not, though this is not the complete compendium on the film, but that Golgotha Hill march of Jesus being certainly more likely to have involved him in a suicidal state of mind than it did of him planning to be a savior for all mankind. Is well, it's something the religious don't want to own up to, because they're having too much fun using Jesus killing as prototypical and templative for their interest in going along framing issues around those who love life, and that they themselves love and fetishize death more than we do life. Includes a lot of dog ideas, like the supernatural beings that don't exist are gonna reward them for their moral behavior here on Earth, and if it weren't for that reward system, then why observe any moral decency now? And this is where even the classic old school challenge of nihilism that I think in a short few number of months you'll exhaust nihilism, growing bored of it more than anything else. And yeah, so these corporate bigwigs are right in their own minds that what they're doing in pronouncing the judgments that they do is backed by accurate detections of your mentality by them. Is absolutely mistaken. I mean, they can't even. You got Roger Toll saying what to Christians? He thinks Jesus died for him too, rather than being suicidal while going up the hill of Golgotha after being betrayed, handed over for ransom money, abducted, whipped, debased and mocked and murdered. Once the psychology of it is estimated to a probability, or to a greater probability in opposition to a lesser probability, then that greater probable account for the type of state of mind Jesus was in while going up that hill will surely be estimated to be suicidal, more likely than this occurred so that Jesus could save Luke's soul, and indeed that of the whole world. So I do sense that this phenomenon is evil, but it's not something that Roger Toll could do on his own. But yeah, so he'll go, his studying process takes a long time for him to unearth facts. So he'll later and eventually realize that he's so enthusiastic about illegitimate research scam projects that he'll do it to staff. So he has posed a verified threat to me since since I began with the company. How was that now? 50 minutes. Watch me cut this one to take. To refer more so about this bind mode of theirs, it results in a bunch of, you're made to wonder about the way in which you've been verbally accosted, but you know enough to know from the way that your nerves move in the back of your head that they've prearranged it some way or another. And what it does, what I think they worked out was that they had harmed my sex drive. Like I was begging to get raped, and by the time I'd started DJing, I was like, fuck, can someone drug and rape me, please? So I'm like, yeah, good on you, Freemasons, bind 5-year-old boys' balls. So if they say, when they don't listen to them, when they say we like his heart and his inner child, because then it's like how it's the same as how they talk about saying we also have to be careful because we don't want our business going under, and that's all. It would almost always be a conversational ruse because you want to know where they go under in a geographic sense. They don't have the intellect without their tech to be as many steps ahead as they are. And
in the business world. But they do have, in my opinion, the most profound comprehension of organized crime that I've ever had to think about. I still do think that they are too stupid to deserve to be called evil. They think they're heroes. Heroes are the ones that go, I just had to shoot him. I just had to shoot him because of it all. Of these ideas about disassociation get promoted in. It's like, oh, you just had to eat Jesus' body, didn't you? Every Sunday, you had to do it. You had to. Oh, I understand. You pretty things. You had to. And but it's the villain. It's the villain who admits what this world is sort of more or less made up of, and admits how they hate it, how they love it, and admits what they are to themselves and stands by it. What they must have truly thought was that if accosting him directly about, because it was recognized that they were, well, unless it was all about, oh, look, let's drug him up and then later say that, video caused it. If that was the case, then I'm still waiting for them to invent the videos players that spit drugs into you. But well, they did, in a sense. Has happened, but I've lost so much vitality. I have to take action. But where they thought I was at 89, they would have thought, well, if he's a dodgy fucker and we're too rude to approach and talk to him about it, this is the best possible representation. If they had the best of intentions, but they can't have, they cannot have, because I know where I'd be now, and what they want is for me to be found dead, cardiac arrest, them say like father, like son, and then go back to doing what they do, business as usual. But I'm on less drugs now than I was being told I could use back when I worked at Hughes. So they know that because I don't trust them, but I do trust the doctor's practice nearby, and I have been put into serious discomfort. My need to dose will compel me to go into the Hughes building more often than not. So I mean, what they did do, however, was say too many things that were ruder than it would have been to ask. So were you there in 1989? Like, I would have known what that question meant, obviously. And that they think that I couldn't have had that discussion with them while I was working for them. They kept doing a church bind, but I didn't understand that that's what it was. But it was a Freemason design bind, where they, like in church, where they, like what John Safran fucking does at the end of his First God series, and they do like a demonic exorcism, and this was all because they thought I was material witness to or without asking. So they keep binding me against what essentially is my own sense of panic and concern for my own family, and that's absolute abduction. So that they don't gather and get their facts straight before they practice things. Well, you haven't established a trust. It's a, with capital chemists, it's a false trust, and it's always going to be a false trust.
Hi, I'm Gary Gans, the fucking hero from Capital Chemist. Violence is caused by the neurochemical subordination of women, their feelings. They come from their ovaries.